I feel like the same stigma that exists around same-sex, relationships, like it's like taboo, right? Like
Hmm.
we're still, despite the fact that same-sex marriage is legal, federally legal now, right?
Right.
Like I remember when it wasn't. This is a very new law that's in place now. And again, just like cannabis, right? Initially it was state to state.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Different Leaf, a show for new and experienced cannabis consumers. I'm Britt Smith. In case you couldn't tell from the amount of rainbow packaging on everything, June was Pride Month. And this episode, we're going to hear from 3 people in the cannabis industry who identify as LGBTQ+, to learn what it's been like for them working in legal weed. First, I talked to Ian Hackett. He's a marketing executive at Napa Valley Fumé, which is a California-based cannabis branding company. They're the company behind the lake-grade sun-grown cannabis brand. So you're really focusing on sort of tapping a diverse market out there. What has your personal experience been as a gay man who's working in marijuana?
Joining this company, I joined specifically because our CEO, Eric Sklar, is one of the most lovely human beings I've ever met. For me coming in, it was truly important to me to find somebody that had values that I agreed with. Having come out of many years of traditional tech and retail, I'd seen things that, I did them because we had to do them, and that's just the way the company ran. Mm-hmm. So coming into cannabis, I was like, I want to see what the opportunities are. And to find an opportunity to work with someone who shares values with you that are more human values than personal, political, or any other values was really something that this is the right thing for me to do. The team was so welcoming, and the team was so, I think I'm the only gay person in my company, but I felt comfortable. I don't always feel comfortable when I move in the cannabis industry, if it's at a trade show or whatnot. But part of that is some internal things that I'm working out. Mm-hmm. But some of that is just the image that the cannabis industry in the last 3 or 4 years, coming out of the gate.
What do you think that image has been?
I think that image has been what we see in the media mostly, which is there's a stoner bro kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it. I can appreciate it. I think my first impression was walking through a trade show and looking at all the packaging and seeing very different. It seemed like a huge divide from a creative design perspective. One was either black with gold and very heavy, like just very bold, hard statements and edges. And then there was a very, what seemed almost to be, everything was green or shades of green because they were trying to go back to the plant. Mm-hmm. And there was a component of benefits, and there was a component of that. So when I walked through that floor the very first time, I was like, wow, there's 2 camps.
You first kind of came into the cannabis industry not feeling like it was incredibly inclusive. Is that right?
So again, my team was really supportive and inclusive and welcoming. And they're a team of legacy growers and folks who have been in the industry for quite some while in various capacities. When I walked into a trade show, it looked like a representation of the cannabis community to me.
Yeah.
I didn't see myself. I didn't see people I know. I didn't see the brands that I wanted to bring to market.
So how do you think that brands can really do better to support, to represent the LGBTQ community more than just sort of going like rainbow packaging in June?
Yeah, the rainbow packaging in June is thanks, guys and gals, but we need to do a little bit more than that. Yeah. I do think it's just opening the cannabis industry to diversity. And that diversity, with a lot of small companies and a lot of small and emerging industries, people hire who they know. They bring their friends in.
Right.
I did that out of college. My professor told me, don't go get your master's yet. I think you should go get a job.
Hmm.
And so I was in San Francisco in the .com. I called a friend up and she's like, yeah, come on in. We'll find something to do. I get it. That's how the world sometimes works. But I think when I'm talking diversity, it is hiring people with the skill set to do the jobs you need them to do to kind of support your company's goals and objectives. Hiring your friends is, be careful, but it could be great because you have people who think similarly, and you believe you can get your job done faster because you don't have to, like, if you're not looking for the best product to put in market, and if you're not looking for the best option, sure, find people who agree with you and they think just like you, because your vision is going to be your best. But if you want packaging and product and a brand that speaks to multiple audiences, because we are all so different and we all have different values and we all have different wants and needs, then you need to have more diversity at the table when you're developing your product lines, when you're developing your business models, when you're deciding what channels to move into and what product you're going to grow. And that term diversity, I think some folks are like, oh, let's bring in a female and someone of color and an LGBTQI. But it's more than that. It's skill sets. It's different points of view. It's different value structure. Yeah. So it can be whatever that diversity can be very unique to each company and each kind of hiring manager.
But either way, more representation, it reaches out to more of your audience. So it can only be a positive thing to create a company that has more diversity in it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm telling my team, and when I hire, I open it up, and I want to see as many candidates that are qualified as possible. And I'm so proud of us at Napa Valley Fumé because we have female leads in almost all of our business verticals.
There's also a huge spend behind the LGBTQ community. I think the last study that I read was from 2016, but they estimated that the LGBTQ community has a spending power in the US of more than $5 trillion a year. And this is a huge market that, as you're saying, has not quite been tapped within the cannabis space yet. And I think that to ignore this possible group of people who could not only take part in the cannabis industry and lead it, but could also grow it into something different. It would be negligent of companies not to start to be more inclusive in the LGBTQ community, because I think there's been a lot of focus, as there should have been, on inclusivity with communities of color. Some states have done that better than others. I'll tell you, Massachusetts has not been great at it. We've still got like 90% white-owned companies here. But in the move towards trying to be more inclusive, I think that the LGBTQ community is often sort of left out of that effort in some way to be reached.
But, I hope people who are listening, they don't just go and say, rainbow stickers on your packaging during June is fine. We see you, we appreciate that. But how do you incorporate that into your business? How do you incorporate that all year round? How do you really stand behind those efforts? And look, it's not going to be for everyone. We hope more people do open they pull up another chair so that there's a seat at the table for the LGBTQI community and other diverse groups. Not everyone's going to be able to do that, and not everyone maybe wants to do that. And okay. But for the rest of us and those who are open to it, I really just encourage that you do look at diversifying your workforce, looking at the advertising and making sure it is not so hallmarked. In March, don't make it all green and shamrocks. That's not okay. Yeah. You can go beyond that. Be thoughtful with your marketing, be thoughtful with your messaging, be thoughtful with your content, because it matters. And think when you're looking at the models that you're bringing for a photo shoot, or you're looking at who you're partnering with, what do they stand for? And how do they reflect back on your brand?
Next up, I talked to Elias Diestler, a transgender digital artist who has been designing limited edition packaging for select strains at Mayflower Cannabis here in Massachusetts as part of their Artist Spotlight series. I really want to talk to you about like your personal connection with cannabis and sort of how that has inspired the art that you've brought to the Mayflower Cannabis line. So how do you personally connect with cannabis?
I have been using cannabis personally since about 2008, and I became a medical patient in Massachusetts in 2020. So really, it's been a part of my adult life for most of my adult life in terms of helping alleviate depression, anxiety, as well as being a mood booster for me, helping me creatively at times, as well as just being a general social pleasure and way of connecting with others.
So tell me a little bit about your designs themselves and that kind of the art that you make for Mayflower. What is it that you're trying to represent in your art?
I feel like my art is inspired by everything that I've studied and been influenced by in my lifetime. As someone who was trained in more of the computer arts, the physical arts that I'm exposed to come into play in the way that I work in Photoshop. So on the first piece of art that I did, it was very vector based looking, very pop art inspired. And I feel like I was just trying to bring out the personality in each strain with my designs, because people do really care a lot about the strains now that there are so many sources where you can see, exactly what effects that they're each having, how they taste, how they smell. So I wanted to kind of select palettes and use designs that would be reminiscent of these strains independently. And I also just wanted to purposefully use a variety of mediums. Like I said, the first one looking kind of vector-based. The second one involved what I referred to as like a visual effects simulation. With the pineapple upside down cake, I had sort of like a shattering pineapple, if you will, as if it, collided with the ground and is flying all over the place. And then you just have some sort of cherries around it. And the background is sort of just like a prism looking gradient. So yeah, I wanted to use sort of like vector art combined with physics and my love for visual effects and my experience there. And I just think it came out really fun, and it's on a white jar. So
nice. That will definitely pop.
A good one for summer.
Yeah, absolutely. When I heard about this Spotlight series, it was such a cool combination to me of two really expressive underground groups, artists and cannabis consumers, and the way that cannabis influences art for me, for a lot of people, whether it's music or digital art or painting and drawing, it's like, I feel like it's a very uplifting thing. And what I love to see in your art is that I can see that. I can see that, there's pops of color and shape and texture, like you're saying that you saw in the video games. And I can really see it coming through in your art. So I really love that we got the opportunity to see sort of the mixture between cannabis and art together on our packages. I've been noticing that more actually in the Massachusetts cannabis industry, that there's way more thought into the packaging and the art on the packaging out here. I lived out in California, and it was just, I don't know, maybe it was too early. It was like 2015 and they weren't really thinking about it. But it seems out here in Massachusetts, there's been a real desire for our cannabis to look a certain way.
I think that's really cool that you mentioned that, because I was just out in LA as well and went to some of the dispensaries out there. And you're right. I didn't notice actually that they had any sort of like local artist programs like this. So I was really excited that, Mayflower, it was willing to invest in the community that way and to feature local artists to give, the cannabis product that extra layer of personality, I think is highly effective. And I think it's something that if other companies started doing it, they could become much more, I guess, easily or widely embraced by the community, because people love, a special jar. I've often heard a lot of consumers say that they'll just pay a little bit extra to have like a special glass jar that they can hold on to, especially if the design speaks to them. in order to even participate in the artist spotlight, to qualify for Mayflower, you have to have had